Hey, everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob. It's Diana.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's really great.
I don't actually know if I want to be here today.
Oh, no. What
might.
reason might you have?
I don't know. You guys are kind of judgy.
Do you think you'd like to do the podcast more if your parents were here?
I might.
Oh my
I
God.
might.
I am so judgy.
I think I might want to just leave and maybe run down the street and then have someone retrieve me.
Do you think?
And then just watch movies instead.
But do you think you would be willing to stay if you had no tests or assessments to do?
Yeah, if you guys are a little less judgy.
I'm so judgy.
If you had less speaking in public to do, would you be willing to stay?
I am feeling a little stressed. Yeah, it's a little stressful. No
Ah.
one appreciates just how stressful this is.
Oh.
I'm sorry. What if
You
I
should
paid
be.
you money for being here?
Now we're talking.
Oh, I love being paid.
What if
money.
I paid you in hugs?
Oh.
Maybe?
I would do it.
You would do it, Jackie. You love hugs.
I love.
We'll work for hugs.
I
Oh.
love myself some hugs.
See, I'm just rewarded by the sound of my own voice coming through my earphones.
That's probably true.
But anyway, we're not talking about our favorite things on tonight's episode. We are talking about school refusal behavior, or in Diana's case, podcast refusal behavior, PRD.
So hilariously, I didn't get that, and I was like, "Wow!" Until you said
Oh.
judgy, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." Something's happening right now,
Oh.
and I was not privy to this before I sat down.
That should be our new recurring bit where we do a bit. We don't tell you we're doing a bit so that you can react naturally.
I
I
know,
think
it's
that
like-
may be our regular life with
Is that just
Jackie,
kinda-
actually.
I know, guys. You can't be smart in all areas.
It's okay.
Or any,
It's
for
okay.
that
It's
matter.
okay. You're so smart.
I'm friendly.
You are.
Your hair looks great.
You're
Try harder at the podcast.
You're looking good today.
The good microphone you have.
You're funny.
So tonight we are talking about school refusal behavior. And
Yes.
this is a topic that I wanted to talk about, mostly because it is a topic that has been on my mind probably for the past year or so, or year and a half, at which point is when I learned that school refusal behavior was an actual thing that occurred. I kind of always thought it was
It
like
was
that Donald
part
Duck
of-
cartoon where he wouldn't go to school and you had your angel and your devil on one shoulder and you eventually went to school and that was
like
it.
Pinocchio.
Or yeah, or you turn into a donkey and were sent to the mines if you didn't go to school.
I
So
mean, that happens.
solves the problem.
Terrifying.
Yes,
I would never want that
Which
to
is
happen
why
to me.
school refusal is not a problem for our generation.
because of all their
because
Pinocchio,
of
watching.
Pinocchio. Yeah.
Well, I don't think
I
enough
think
kids, the screens today, they're not watching Pinocchio.
And Ramona Quimby, when she's worried about the truant officer,
Oh,
come to get her.
Oh, I never watched that.
It's a book.
It's a book.
I never read that
It
book.
was also a TV show.
Oh, I never read that book.
In any case, school refusal behavior is actually a relatively common problem. And when I did some of the research kind of starting last year and then I kind of continued through the year, we sort of came to, where we are now, which is the episode's coming out the end of June. So most schools in America are letting out for summer vacation. So we thought,
School's out for the summer.
why not do a talk on school refusal behavior?
What you haven't said, Rob, is that the reason why you know about this as a problem is because at your current job as the BCBA, this is part of your job.
Yeah, I've become the school refusal behavior guy
Yeah.
as well.
So there may be other BCBAs out there who find themselves in similar situations.
I have found every episode we put, we're like, I don't know if anyone's doing anything with this. We get at least one or two people saying, that's what I do.
Yeah.
It's very, very exciting. But in this case, I know there's someone doing something about this because it's me.
It's you.
I'm in charge of school refusal behavior. I'm not in charge, but you know what I mean. I've done the research, so I usually have to help lead the team or get the team started at least. And as we will talk about, it is not a process that any one person really can solve. It is a very complicated process. So in looking in the research, you might find the name Christopher Kearney, who is a psychologist. I believe he's still in the University of Nevada. And he wrote the book on school refusal behavior. Like he literally, he wrote a book
Literally.
about school refusal behavior, which we read. We will not be discussing that. We'll be discussing some of his research. But if you just look up Kearney and school refusal, you will find all the articles he's written. He's done more than just school refusal, but that really seems to have been an important issue for him. And one of the reasons when I first started doing this research that I felt it was useful and I wanted to learn more about it was because the initial article, one of his initial articles that we'll be reviewing tonight, discusses the idea of the function of school refusal behavior and goes so far as to say, I'd like to do a functional analysis of school refusal behavior, when really functional analyses, they've been around for a while, but it sort of had not picked up sort of the pace that I think when we think of functional analysis today, where every article's got a functional analysis in it, and it's always, you can't write a paper without citing, Iwata et al. It's so I thought it was interesting that there was something he was looking at from even a psychologist's perspective way back then.
He was way ahead of his time there.
He really was.
Yes.
What does he look like?
I don't remember. I saw a picture of him once, but
What did he look like in 1990?
I'm sure he was a psychology stud. Looking at
Going back in time.
Looking at all these exciting functional
I
analysis.
looked pretty great in 1990.
I actually did.
I have my bangs. That you curl them, and then you spray them, and then you brush them, and then they get big. Just a poof, like a poodle poof.
Oh, in 1990, I was crimping my hair.
Oh, I never had a
Even
crimper.
my
And I was
bangs.
really sad.
Yeah.
Some other people did, and then you could crimp like stars and shapes into it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I never had school refusal because I loved crimping my hair, and I loved the attention that I got from crimping my hair.
I would occasionally do like the mental health days at school, or if I forgot to do something, I'd stay home, but never anything that really seriously impacted my ability to graduate or get good grades,
Did you do the trick like in E.T. where you hold the thermometer up to the lamp?
No,
make it hot?
no, I never
I was
did.
like, oh no, what's he doing?
You just take care of ET.
He's
You can't-
lying. Okay, proceed.
All right. Well, now I'm thinking I was ripping my ET Blu-ray so I could have ET in high definition on our media server, and I got to the scene where ET's watching the Quiet Man, and so John Wayne grabs Maureen O'Hara and gives her a kiss, and then Elliot is telepathically linked to him and gives the other girl the kiss while the frogs are escaping, and then the kids are jumping the frogs out, and it's that dramatic music, and my God, what a great movie that was.
Oh, no, Rob's about to cry,
what a
guys.
great movie. That's not a sad part of ET. That's just like great filmmaking. Good job, Steven
great
Spielberg.
filmmaking makes you
Great
cry, too.
Filmmaking.
You get a little teary-eyed.
Just amazing.
It is real good.
All right. I would skip. I didn't want to dissect a frog. I would have skipped school for that, I think.
I sat outside in the hall.
Oh.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's enough dissection talk and ET talk. We're going to be talking mainly about 3 articles with a little, historical one thrown in. The first article is going to be that Kearney and Silverman article from Behavior Modification in 1990, and it's called A Preliminary Analysis of a Functional Model of Assessment and Treatment for School Refusal Behavior. The next article is going to be also Kearney with Purcell and Alvarez from Cognitive and Behavioral Practice 2001, and that's treatment of school refusal behavior in children with mixed functional profiles, and that's kind of a nice series of case studies. And then we'll end with Kearney, Chapman, and Cook from International Journal of Behavioral Consultation and Therapy 2005, moving from assessment to treatment of school refusal behavior in youth, which is a very good summary of sort of what the process as outlined by Kearney is. And it gives a couple, not more examples that are in his book, but I think it is more succinct. If you need to know about school refusal behavior right now and you don't want to read the book, which is not that long a book. And then we'll very briefly, to start, be talking about school absenteeism and school refusal behavior in youth, a contemporary review, also by Christopher Kearney from Clinical Psychology Review 2008. Some background information on school refusal behavior, because again, I think most people, when they hear school refusal behavior, they think truancy, or the idea of truancy, or the term that used to be popular, school phobia. We will not actually be talking about school phobia, because school phobia, it has been determined by the research world, refers to an actual fear of school. So similar as you can have arachnophobia, where you're scared of spiders, like you're terrified and you got a panic attack. Most children who engage in school refusal behavior are not literally scared of school. So school phobia is very rarely actually the problem. So we're not going to use that term. The sort of umbrella term that's discussed by Kearney in that 2008 article is absenteeism. Absenteeism refers to excusable or inexcusable absences from elementary or secondary school. So that would be that you have a physical ailment that keeps you from going to school, or you are choosing to not go to school. And the problem with chronic absenteeism, regardless of the function of the absenteeism or the reason for the absenteeism, is it leads to a high rate of dropout. And when students are not in school and they drop out of school, it removes them from access to a lot of programs that might actually help them resolve whatever the problem is. And then later in life will lead to economic deprivation, marital problems, social problems, psychiatric problems. So stay in school, kids.
It's cool.
I know it can be hard. In terms of how prevalent a problem absenteeism is, the National Center for Education Statistics in 2005 listed 19% of 4th graders and 20% of 8th graders as missing at least 3 days of school in a month. And for those of you who work in public schools, especially in the months where there are vacations, and if you're in like New England or the Midwest where you get a lot of snow, where there are snow days, 3 days in a month might be the entire month.
That is true.
And if you look at how many missed at least 5 in a month, it's 7% and 7% for both.
But that can be for any reason or specifically?
Yeah, that's just absenteeism. Okay. So that's just not being at school for some reason.
Okay.
Those rates have been stable since 1994, which, again, physical ailments will occur. So there are a number of reasons, students might not go to school that are not related to school refusal behavior. But still, you would hope that rate improved. And then in high school, 2005, the school dropout rate, and again, that's in America, from 16 to 24 is about 10%. And that's the status school dropout rate, meaning that it is students who not only dropped out of school, but then never went back to get their high school diploma.
It's a pretty high percentage.
It is pretty high.
They're not quite sure. I mean, they mentioned they're not quite sure if that's a good number because it can be hard to gather some of that information because a lot of students will just like not come to school for days or they skip classes because when you're in high school, you have a lot more mobility. And that might have changed to some extent. I'm not sure. I'm just going off the 2008 article. I know there have been a lot of articles about I know New York put in a lot of plans to help with absenteeism. We're not going to discuss any of those because, again, those are more all-purpose. If you text the parents to let them know their kids missed a day of school, the kids show up more kind of techniques.
Yes, we did mention it.
Well, I'm not going to go into it because I also did not read the article. So
mention. That's funny.
When we're talking about school refusal behavior, which is the term we'll use for the rest of the episode, we're talking about all inexcused absences. So there is no, I don't want to say there's no reason, but there's no actual, physical ailment or reason a parent would say, my child can't come to school today. So that would even include, we're going to a family reunion and we're going to leave early. These are child-motivated refusals to attend school or to remain in school. If we mention truancy or if you hear the word truancy, that usually refers to the idea of a student who it's an illegal absence. So they were not excused. They are not leaving school because of anxiety, and it's usually not known by their parents that they are not in school.
I love that. I never did that ever.
Yeah, so if you skip, if you cut class, like you drive to school and then you leave school, or you say I'm going to school and then just don't go to school, that would be truancy.
I did that once actually when I was a senior.
Wait a minute, I did.
And
Truant, they'll cry.
I went to Dairy Queen for my lunch break, which is hilarious, and then my teacher showed up, and she's like, you get back to school, I'm calling your mom. And she did call my mom. Yeah. And my mom was like, did you go back to school? And I was like, yep. She's like, okay. And then she didn't care. She's like, were you hungry? I'm like, yeah, I was.
Why could you leave? You could leave campus?
No.
Oh. Okay.
I just left during lunchtime, though.
We couldn't leave either.
Yeah, we couldn't leave.
Oh, you could when you were a senior. You had like senior privileges.
We had no privileges.
No.
Looking at school refusal behavior, it usually kind of falls along a continuum. So you'll usually have either early stages or sort of, lighter school refusal behavior would be the student that kind of pleads, I don't want to go to school today. They finally go to school because their parents are yelling at them and then they get to school. Then it can really lead into misbehavior in the morning. So, big tantrums in the morning. Then it could lead into tardiness in the morning. And then, followed by attendance because it just takes so long to get the child out the door or the child's getting kind of old. So you can't really use the same tricks you used to use. Then it could expand into periodic absences or skipping of class, then repeated absences mixed with some periods of attendance, and then complete absence during certain periods of the year. And sort of the most extreme case of school refusal behavior is, as you would expect, complete absence for an extended period of time.
Right.
And it's not that all cases of school refusal behavior will follow that trajectory, but that is typically what you will see. That kind of starting at the small, I just don't want to go. Couldn't I stay home today? Oh, it'll be fine. To the, I'm not going. You can't make me go to school. To the actual not going to school. Because, when you think about it, if you're a parent and your child's refusing to go to school, it's hard to make them go to school if they're a certain age. You can't actually physically make them go. You have to get to work. There are a lot of reasons that you would say, fine, whatever, stay home. You hope it's going to be, the one day and they'll get over it, but potentially it might not be.
Sure.
We will not be talking about absenteeism in any of these articles because absenteeism, again, like we said, could be due to medical problems or the need to support a family financially. So you're dropping out because my family's going to get evicted. I have to get a job. Teen pregnancy. There are a lot of reasons that students end up dropping out or leaving school. They're not all related to school refusal behavior. So please don't think we're these are the only reasons kids don't go, and we're going to talk about, the function of school refusal behavior, and these treatments would work if you were a teenager who was pregnant. They would not work. Do not try to use them. It would be embarrassing for you. Any other things, Jay? I know in terms of statistics, any other things that you guys noted or wanted to bring up before we get into the main articles?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You hit the top of the desk on the bottom of the desk.
Great. That's how it goes.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the...
That's not a phrase.
No.
You hit the nail on the head with that phrase.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a phrase.
That's a phrase. This is what I'm working on, guys, in my real life.
Idioms.
Yep. I'm bad at them.
So we're going to start with the 1990 article by Kearney and Silverman on the preliminary analysis of a functional model of assessment. Now, there are a lot of other articles that Kearney has written that sort of update and expand on these ideas. This article goes into kind of the early days of the assessment tool he created called the School Refusal Assessment Scale. And there's an updated version, the SRASR, but that article is really boring and more about like test, retest reliability and a lot of numbers. So we thought this one was more fun from a historical and also from a readability perspective.
And the SRASR was revised in 2004.
That's not a really fun one to read.
No.
So we didn't read it. I mean, I've read it, but we didn't read it tonight.
We only read fun articles.
Only fun ones.
Only ones that are party-inducing. You pick it up and it's like balloons are popping out of the page, streamers, someone going, woohoo!
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of the original thoughts, so Kearney starts the article off by describing historically what does school refusal behavior look like, and a lot of the original thoughts about why kids wouldn't want to go to school back in the 20s where, well, they have some sort of fear of leaving their parents. It's paired with the school setting. Therefore, that creates a phobia. And that's sort of been discredited as the main reason students wouldn't go to school. In the 60s and 70s, though, there were a lot of published studies sort of looking at, okay, well, if that's the case, let's desensitize students to going back to school. And that was effective in some of the published studies back then. There were other behaviorists sort of in that same time period, the 60s and 70s, looking at, well, couldn't school refusal behavior be an issue of competing reinforcement? You've got to go to school, but there's way better things to do at home. So why wouldn't you stay home to engage in, you want to engage in responses that get you the most reinforcement, which is, I don't know, what was fun to do in the 60s and 70s? Pong?
TV. TV had just come out.
TV came out before the 60s and 70s.
I know, but it was color then.
It was, yes. There was better.
And more people had TVs.
More cop shows in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like this? I was like on
you got Home
Feud.
Pong.
I was on Family Food right there. I was like, TV.
Family Food.
Family Feud. It's like one of my favorite shows.
Show me television.
Right?
Bang, How bang, about bang. That show where it was like, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy.
Oh,
Wipeout?
Press my luck. Press my luck.
Press your luck. Yeah.
Press your luck.
That was, I think that was 80s.
Good. That was definitely
maybe late 70s. Late 70s, early 80s, or mid 80s. In any case, there were better things to do at home, so don't go to school. And in that case, there were some, again, some treatments. Okay, well, what if we teach parents to, parents maybe inadvertently reinforce those responses of staying home, and the kids have somatic complaints, and they're like, oh, well, you got to stay home, and then they get to do fun stuff, so they're reinforcing the response of I'm going to complain about my stomach hurting more, or even I think my stomach is hurting. And then there were some more studies looking at, well, let's set up some contingency contracts, or let's kind of shape their return to school. Let's set up better systems of reinforcement for going to school. And again, they had a lot of success. So it's not that there were no treatments for school refusal behavior before 1990. It was more that Kearney and Silverman felt like, well, wouldn't it be better if we had some easier ways to determine which of these treatments would be the most effective. So thinking about school refusal behavior just like any other behavior, in that there's got to be a function of the school refusal behavior, and it may not always be the same function.
Right.
I like that.
Yes, because school refusal is just the topography.
Doesn't
of the
tell
behavior.
us why.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And, this article, or at least Kearney's initial work, owed a lot to, I think, and he even mentioned, Durand and Crimmins' work in creating the Motivation Assessment Scale,
Right.
the MAS.
It looks a lot like it. It
Yeah,
looks a lot like
it's
it.
it's very much modeled on that idea of, we can ask certain questions around the functions, the main functions of behavior, and this will allow us to determine a strong hypothesis. I think later articles, it's more about strong hypothesis. This is early one, I think it's, and we'll get it. We know the function if we do this 16-item questionnaire.
But
you won't.
You won't know the function based on an interview.
No.
An indirect assessment. You will not know the function, dear listener.
No. But back in 1990, any move in that direction was
It's a good
seen very
direction to go,
positively.
but I think that it's better for him to, couch that in saying it'll lead us towards the hypothesis.
Yes, and his later work does. This article
It's okay. Everyone, takes
glosses over that a
takes
little bit.
time to refine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So he created the School Refusal Assessment Scale, which is a series of 16 questions that look at that are all the SRAS, which are all around 4 categories of the functions, the possible functions of school refusal behavior. So category 1 is an avoidance or of specific fearfulness or anxiety related to school setting. Category 2 is something, would the students be escaping some sort of aversive social situations? Category 3, could the function be some sort of attention getting or issue with separation anxiety around leaving your parents? And then 4, the good old, I'd rather stay home because there's better stuff to do at home than boring ass school. And so basically, behaviorally, categories 1 and 2 describe school refusal behavior as, functioning as, a form of negative reinforcement, where 3 and 4 functioning as a form of positive reinforcement.
Got it.
Love it. I love that they were not... Kearney's not a behavior analyst.
No.
And I love that he read the behavior analytic literature and is now incorporated into his work. And he talked about it in terms of behavior analytic principles for the most part, right? He used the term positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement.
Correctly.
Correctly, actually, too. And I was like, ooh, I was like so jazzed when I was reading it.
Well,
so,
mostly when I have to look up something that doesn't have a lot of research in our own literature, one of the things that scares me is how much of this is just going to be like namby-pamby garbage. It's like too many scales and too many like I'm hypothesizing based on something I think you're thinking. And when I read this, it definitely had that sense of, okay, this guy understands behavior. He might not understand it as well as a behavior analyst. Maybe he does. I don't know. I only know him from the literature he's written. But yeah, he, like you said, he's clearly read the literature. I mean, even he thanks Mark Durand for contributions or for his valuable comments throughout the course of this study.
That's awesome.
Listed here. So he was definitely had friends in the behavior analytic community. Some examples of what that category 1, that avoidance of specific stimuli at school, related to school, would be a kid who is, scared of a teacher who's mean, or scared of the fire alarm, or hates being on the school bus. Category 2 would be, I don't want to speak in front of other kids, or there are certain peers that maybe bully me and I don't want to be around them. Category 3 would be, I don't want to leave mom and dad, or like a sibling. Like I'm like, like what you think of as like the little kid on their first day of kindergarten. Like, don't leave me, mommy. I don't want to go. Like that would be the simplistic version of category 3. And then 4 would be the kids who wants to stay home because they're going to watch that cool 70s TV or do drugs is another example. From this comes the SRAS. Now, again, the original SRAS only had 16 questions with 4 related to each of those 4 categories. The SRAS-R, again, that article is not quite as interesting to read. It just sort of ups the number of questions to 24 and breaks them into 6 categories. And you can find that online. I think, we'll try to put a link to a version of an online form I found in the show notes. And basically what the questionnaire is, or just a series of questions that when you are done will sort of let you know, these answers lead me to this functional hypothesis.
Yeah, so I'm going to add a little here. So they have the child fill out the form, and they have the parent fill out the form, and then they average the scores together. Mm-hmm. And the one with the highest score is then the presumed first hypothesis on why the behavior is occurring. But there could be some smaller numbers in other places, definitely. Right? So as a secondary function. but then they average that score together from all the people that take the exam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they use sort of the mass scoring guidelines.
Right.
So if the scores are within 0.25 of each
Right.
other, the categories, then they're tied. These are
Right.
both potential functions
Sure.
of the school refusal behavior. And of course, there's the issue that we'll kind of talk about later, maybe in dissemination station, of what if the parents say one function and then the kid says a totally different function? Do you discount one of them? What happens there? And that's a real problem with any questionnaire, which is why one should not just use questionnaires and then call it a day. But
right.
That's what happened in this study mostly. There were a lot of questionnaires. So the subjects, we had 7 children and adolescents who were experiencing difficulty going to school or were just flat out refusing to go to school. There were 5 males, 2 females, and they ranged in age from 9 to 16. They did not use children who'd been out of school for more than a year. These participants in particular had missed an average of 24.8 days. So that was a range of 66 to 80 days of school missed. Most of them reported some sort of somatic complaint like a stomach ache or a headache or nausea to their parents before they went to school. Some of them mentioned that they felt really shaky or tense when they were around others at school or that they were embarrassed. One was pretty honest. I just don't want to go to school. Thank you for your honesty, participant 5, I think it was. The overall assessment, because again, this was a new assessment, and I feel like people would look down on your article if you're like, I made up an assessment, and then that's the only assessment I used in this study. So they used a lot of assessments and questionnaires, which, I don't know, P.S. guys, I know if I ever read reports and it's like 70 questionnaires, I really glaze over on a lot of those things. They're just kind of like, oh my, there's so many questionnaires and they all have the same name.
Yeah, it's like blah, 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 blah. 5th edition.
And it's always just someone's report on something, and you're just left saying,
Yeah.
like, I don't want to discount this, but I also don't know how much I can put all my trust in this as the reason or the problem.
One thing I like to note, too, about this article, though, is that a lot of the kids had comorbid diagnoses. So only 2 of the children had what they call no mental disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else had something. And
but they based all those mental disorders on the answers to the questionnaires.
Oh.
Again, it's one of those situations of they're psychologists, Kearney and Silverman, so I guess they're able to do that.
They can diagnose.
But it is sort of like it's just a bunch of questionnaires.
Right, but it is a lot. I mean, like, only one participant only has 1. So participant 3, who's a 12-year-old man, has...
It was like an oppositional disorder. One kid had ADD.
He's a 12-year-old man?
He's a 12-year-old male. Sorry. He's a 12-year-old man. The 12-year-old male had over-anxious disorder, and that was the only one of the participants that had some sort of diagnosis that only had 1. Everyone else had like
they came out
4,
like separation anxiety
3.
disorder.
So there was a lot of stuff going on with them too, right? Like, I just find that interesting. So it weren't just like, oh yeah.
I wrote down the assessments. You guys want to hear them all?
Yeah.
I'm going to say them real fast. Yeah, you can pick up when I'm
my
not
gosh,
ready.
so this is going to be like that commercial where you're telling me all the side effects
Yeah.
and I may die. Go for it.
Assessments. Many questionnaires, including anxiety disorders interview schedule for children, fear survey schedule for children, revised, children's manifest anxiety scale, revised, the state trait anxiety inventories for children, the social anxiety scale for children, and finally, the school refusal assessment scale.
Revised. I'm just adding the revised there. 5th edition.
And these pretty much just all would, assess variety of childhood behavior disorders. There's a lot of self-report about what kids are, just
how
fearful
anxious do you
of.
feel? Right. How fearful do you feel?
General anxiety measures, another measure of anxiety that was a little more specific. So they really just all had to do with fear, anxiety, and does this lead to challenging behavior problems?
Right.
And then, of course, the SRAS.
Yeah, and that's fair, right? Because we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about these case studies, and a lot of it overlaps with what we talked about in our anxiety episode, and the way that they approach treatment overlapped as well. So, we're all on board with the fact that anxiety is a real thing, that we can measure it as behavior, and I think that school refusal is a common manifestation of this problem.
Right.
But
there might be other ways to measure it.
True.
In addition to these checklists.
Yeah.
Yes. The original SRS, like we said, is a 16-item questionnaire, and it's a Likert scale. So for every question, do you think you would, are you nervous about this at school, or do you think it would be easier to go to school if your parents were there? It's at least one of the questions on the revised form. You would score from 0, never, that's never a problem, to 6, that is always a problem, or that's a very true statement.
If this was me, I might go right down the middle. I love going right down the middle on like art scales.
I never wanted my parents to go to school with me, so I wouldn't.
Oh,
I'd be
that's
zero right
I
there.
would. That'd be fun.
If you're a teenager?
Would it be?
I liked my mom in my teenage years.
I like my mom too, but I don't want to go to school with me.
I'd be like, this is my mom. Mean Girls. Just kidding.
So to start, the SRAS, this is a quote, shows preliminary test-retest reliability and concurrent validity with the anxiety disorders interview schedule for children. So I think that, I believe there had been a previous article where it was more about statistics and, relations with other assessments. So, blah, who cares? Not me. So again,
that's how you have to establish your assessment, yeah.
But again, I'm not interested. I want you to tell me that all happened.
You want it to have internal validity and external validity.
So in any case...
Tell me what happens next, Rob. I can't wait to know.
Right. So you're going to take all those scores. They take the combined mean of the SRAS filled out by the child, by the parent or parents, and if you're able to, by the teacher. And whatever the average is, that mean is, as long as it's 0.25 ahead of everything, above everything else, that's your primary functional hypothesis that you're going to go from. Is it fearfulness about school? Is it escape from social situations? Is it a matter of gaining attention from your parents? Or is it about gaining tangible reinforcement? I'm just going to quickly go through the subjects and their treatments because every function was determined through these 7 subjects. And therefore, there was a hypothesized function, therefore a treatment package that was deemed to be the most fitting for that hypothesis. And then they'll talk about whether or not they succeeded in changing school refusal behavior.
One thing I want to bring up, Rob, is they actually give the mean scores on the school refusal assessment per subject across, like, parent, child, teacher score.
It's a big table.
It's a big table, but when you're looking at it, it's so interesting that you were right when you said earlier that it's very rare that everyone agrees on the function.
Yep.
So, like, for instance, I'm looking at subject 4 here. And subject 4 really has this highest as fear, but it's only at 0.75. And, like, the father thinks it's a 4.
Mm-hmm.
The mother thinks it's a 2. The teacher thinks it's a 1. And then everything else, he's like 0.38, 0.38, 0.38 for the other function. So I'm not sure, like, how reliably his would be, right?
Yeah, I found I've done a couple of these, so it's a very small sample size.
Right.
But I find that typically the children rate their hypotheses or, like, from the questions comes out very low compared to parents who are usually a bit higher. Yeah. And it's it's very rare. And Kearney even mentions in this article, it's very rare for everyone to all agree.
You're right. And one of my other favorite ones that I just want to note is subject 6 wrote zeros on everything except for attention, which I love. And everyone else said other thing, like, had like scores for everything else. And he's like, no, I just want attention. No.
I just want to hang out with my parents.
Right? I just think that's funny.
That is pretty funny.
Anyway.
I do like that throughout the whole process in these articles, they include the child.
I do like that too. Mm-hmm.
Results. Subject 1's SRAS came out as the highest mean was, the function was that category 1, so just general kind of fear of school. Subjects 2, 3, 4, and 5 fell into category 2. They had sort of a aversion or escape from aversive social situations. Subject 6 came into category 3. They wanted attention from their parents. And subject 7, category 4, they, again, hypothesized to be skipping school to gain tangible reinforcement.
Amazing how they are all ordered like that. Just,
I know.
Like, randomly, and then they ended up falling into the categories according to their number. Oh my God.
The numbers might have come after the work had already been done. For easier reading. The parents and the children also did, or teenagers did, a 1-week baseline in which they had to record their daily levels of anxiety ratings. They did ratings of depression, general distress, and parents would note the difficulty of the student getting to school. I'm just going to generally talk about what the treatments were. These are not exhaustive treatments, as you'll see in the article Diana will be discussing and in the article Jackie will be discussing, but they're the ones in this article.
My article is exhausting.
Exhaustive.
So for category 1, the student, again, from their scores, the hypothesis was this student is skipping school or school refusal for specific fearfulness of something at school or some sort of a general over-anxiousness. So for this student, just like we talked about a lot in our anxiety episode, they did imaginal and in vivo desensitization and relaxation training. So imagine doing something at school that makes you feel upset, and then let's practice breathing, relaxing our body. And after 8 sessions, the parents were like, and the child were like, we don't want to do this anymore. Everything's fine. And it was. For category 2, so I'm avoiding aversive social situations. The treatment was we're going to do cognitive behavioral therapy and social skill modeling and role play to increase your levels of social skill performance. So they'd restructure negative thoughts. So for those of you who don't know cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm not going to go into it because I also am not an expert in it by any means, but you talk about, here's a thing you're thinking. Do you really think that's going to happen? Let's test the hypothesis. And then you have them test and come up with a different response they can engage in. And does that come up with a better outcome or a worse outcome? And then social skills. We all should be aware of social skills with role play, performance feedback. Category 3, the student who was hypothesized to be staying or refusing school for parent attention. The parents were taught, actually it was a treatment for the parents. They were taught how to shape appropriate behaviors using a DRO procedure. So if the child is, not going to school, fine, no attention for them while they're at home. They have to stay in their room all day. They have to do homework at night. And then they sort of shaped up the amount of time the child had to go to school in order to gain back a lot of those privileges. And then they went from 2 days to up to 5 days. And then finally, category 4, hypothesized contingency, positive rewards. So they set up contingency contracting. So if you go to school, you can stay up later. If you don't go to school, we will charge you money from your allowance. If you go to school and don't argue with us, you will get extra privileges. If you argue with us and skip school, you will lose those privileges. Kind of just basic contract. Basic contract was set up.
I like those.
Yeah. So
I wish that someone did that with me at my job.
Just get set up.
If you go to work, Jackie, I will give you some one-on-one time with your favorite person and help with your homework.
So is category 1 more like the demand aspects of school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's and it also refers to the idea of just general anxiety about occurrences of school. So your teacher, the fact you have to ride a bus, not related to the social aspect of riding a bus. It's noisy.
Like so much of school seems social, but there is still like, I'm worried about getting a bad grade.
Yeah.
Like that type of thing. Yeah.
I'm going to have a test.
Yeah.
My teacher yells at me.
Or they had like the material's too hard.
Yep.
That was one of them.
Okay.
So there were a lot of ways that Kearney and Silverman defined success. The main one certainly was that they wanted all.
How do you define
to
success,
call this treatment successful was the students were at 90% school attendance for at least 2 weeks, which didn't include if they were legitimately sick. Or 75% in their levels of anxiety, depression, or general distress, according to all these logs that they are taking. They did some other units, but we're going a little long, so I'm going to skip some of that. And then the results. They said, okay, did the child meet that goal of getting to school for at least 90% of the time across 2 weeks by the end of our treatments? Were there improvements in their distress ratings? And were there improvements seen in parent questionnaires? So the easiest result to say is, 6 out of 7 students actually did return to school for a minimum of 2 weeks by post-treatment. They also had an overall increase in attendance. I think one student might have been out 3 days. The rest were at 1 or 0. And almost all of them, at least one of them, was because they were actually sick.
6 out of 7.
Yeah. One of the students, 1 of 7 decided they wanted to get a job. So their parents said, we're going to let you get a job. And they got a job.
She was going to night school.
She was the oldest student as well.
She's 16.
On the night school.
She was trying to get her GRE.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like friends with her and like standing up for her. Guys, she's trying to get her GRE, okay? It's fine.
Now, so in that respect, hooray, treatment was a success. When you look at the measurement of, anxiety scales, depression scales, the results really all over the place.
They really were. I was actually fairly surprised about that.
Yeah. Some of
but
that.
Then not.
Well, some of that had to do with the idea everyone was rating their anxiety, but not every student was noted as, they're probably engaging in school refusal behavior because of anxiety.
Right.
So if your treatment has nothing to do with decreasing anxiety, why would you expect the anxiety levels to change?
Right.
The same with levels of, distress. If you aren't going to school because you're staying home to watch TV, your levels of distress probably won't change too much. I mean, they might not. So for the most part, if the subjects had a treatment that should have decreased one of those rating scales, so for example, the students who are showing a lot of anxiety around going to school, they got treatment about anxiety. For the students who were, fearful about school and didn't want to leave their parents, they should have, had less fear about leaving their parents. The scores mostly showed a move in the right direction.
Sure.
But again, it was a mixed bag overall. And this kind of leads to the problem of, one of the issues related to this treatment, it's kind of the treatment packages and how they came to the idea of these treatment packages was, the scores usually were all over the place a bit on the SRAS. And
Right.
Kearney and Silverman even note, when the scores were the same, they lined up parents and students said, this is the reason I can't go to school, based on the questions. They weren't directly asked, which of these functions do you think describes you? Like a Cosmo quiz? The treatment seemed to be much more
Did you
successful.
choose all A's? If so.
The student got to school. Yeah, the student got back to school, and they showed the expected decrease in whatever measurement they would expect to see. When the results were a little bit more all over the place, the results you got were all over the place. The kids still went back to school, except for that one student, but their decreases or increases in anxiety or fearfulness really was sort of all over the place. And some of that might have to do with the fact that perhaps the treatment was not tailored to what the actual function of the school refusal behavior was. So that was a big limitation of the study, but again, it was a move in the right direction to have a clear procedure as to what hypothesis for school refusal behavior's function can we determine, given some set of information, and does that help us come up with a treatment that has a good chance of being successful? And at least in this study, for the most part, the answer was yes. Yes on both counts.
Right.
Now, that's not the end of the research. This was 1990, so
he was a doctoral candidate. He was not a doctor. He didn't have his doctorate yet.
Oh, wow, I didn't even notice that.
Working under Wendy Silverman. He was a doctoral candidate when this was published.
Oh.
So yeah, it hasn't stopped yet because then he got his doctorate and he's like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I like about this this article is that he really does his research, and there's like a breadth of breadth. That's such a hard word to say, of resources and references. So he really references a wide variety. Wow, can't even say words. A wide variety of articles here that are not just his own. So in my article,
unlike us.
So in Diana, in my article, it's all him.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, my reference section is just him.
Yep.
Kearney,
He's been busy.
Kearney.
Oh my God, it really is.
No,
Yes.
literally, there's nothing else but him.
Most of the articles, once you get to the 2000s, are just he's citing his own work. Which, I
Right.
mean, again, I don't know if a lot of other people are doing this research. Maybe they decided, you know
doesn't
what?
seem so.
You did it. You got
Right.
it, Kearney. Why would I do more research
Take it
on this?
home, right?
What else?
You
What
do
else
it.
do I have to do?
But one thing I do like about that is he is pulling. He's pulling all of the articles, at least initially.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this one you can see.
He's actually
did a
done
lot
the
of
research,
background
so it's
work.
not like I'm just doing my own research for the fun of it, and I'm just going to reference myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Come on, Kearney. Just pull one other person in there. But it's pretty awesome. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Kearney.
So that was one of the earliest articles related to the use of the SRAS and school refusal behavior.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Before we take a break, why don't we give it one of our secret code words?
Okay.
So, Baby Inside Track is an ACE-approved podcast, which means if you listen to our show and go to our website, you are able to purchase CEs from us. However, you will need not one, but two secret code words hidden throughout the episode so that we know that you did your duty and listened to the show. Because we can't be there with you. We're not actually in your radio or on your phone right now.
I am.
Except for Jackie, who's a ghost. And the first keyword is lake. L-A-K-E. Lake. It's a body of water enclosed by land around it.
And you swim in it.
You could swim in it.
Or not.
Or not swim in it. Lake. All right. So we've talked a lot about school refusal behavior. Maybe you think we've talked about all of it. But no, there's more to come. And we will talk about 2 more articles after the break.
Hey, ABA Inside Trackers. It's me, Jackie.
And it's me, Diana. Jackie, I'm really excited to be joining you in this commercial because I've also started my career path at Regis.
Yay! Yes, that's right, folks. If you want to start an exciting career in applied behavior analysis, you should check out the Master's and Certificate program in Applied Behavior Analysis at Regis College. You can learn from both Diana and me. Here are some interesting facts about our program.
90% of our 2016 graduates passed the BCBA exam during their first time taking the exam. We think this is a really great testament to the program.
We started an on-campus autism center in fall 2017. The center provides behavior analytic services to children diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder right at Regis College. The center will offer employment opportunities for some of our graduate students. Students working at the center will receive partial tuition remission.
We also offer opportunities for paid clinical placements and graduate assistantships starting in the student's first year. So all of our grad students are currently working in the field, either part-time or full-time.
Yes, we help students identify their practicum placements because we think it's imperative students receive excellent training and experience in the application of behavior analysis. Therefore, we screen placements to ensure students receive high-quality practicum placements.
We are approved by the BACB to provide intensive practicum. Students complete at least 750 hours, but most complete much more over the course of 3 semesters. Across that time, students complete a professional portfolio that includes completing a variety of application exercises, such as conducting assessments, developing behavior plans, training curriculum, and more. This portfolio functions as a way to ensure students are learning the essentials of being an effective behavior analyst and is a great way to showcase your work at job interviews upon graduation. I love it.
Students enroll in 2 courses per semester and graduate in a little under 2 years. Our courses are offered in traditional classroom and hybrid formats, which enables a student to focus on one course at a time while still completing the program quickly.
All of the faculty are PhD-level BCBAs with strong applied and research backgrounds in ABA, and all have published papers in respected peer-reviewed journals.
We ensure small class sizes so that all students receive personalized attention from their professors, and advisors are easily accessible to meet with students.
There is also an invited lecture series at Regis, which involves inviting outside experts in ABA to speak on specialized topics relating to practicing ABA, and these are really great opportunities for students to learn from a variety of experts in the field in addition to their professors.
And last summer we completed an international service trip to Iceland, which we plan to do every other year.
Although we train students to work effectively with individuals diagnosed with autism, we also have opportunities for students to work with individuals with a variety of diagnoses and typically developing individuals as well. In addition, the coursework covers the broad applications of ABA with respect to solving socially important problems.
There are opportunities for students to be involved in faculty research as well.
We have a great location. We're just 12 miles from the center of Boston.
So check us out at www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Keep responding.
And we are back. And after this break, we've jumped ahead into the future to discuss what school refusal behavior treatment looks like after this early assessment with the SRAS. And so we're going to have 2 case studies, also from Kearney, that Diana will discuss, that sort of goes into some of the updated kind of protocols around testing, and then what treatment, a little bit more detailed treatment would look like. Because surprise, surprise, just like with many other challenging behaviors, sometimes it's not just one function that you have to deal with. It could be 2 or more. So Diana, take it away.
Okay. The article I'm going to talk about is called Treatment of School Refusal Behavior in Children with Mixed Functional Profiles by, you guessed it, Kearney, Purcell, and Alvarez from the Cognitive and Behavioral Practice Journal in 2001. And the gist of this article is that they present 2 case studies of 2 individuals with school refusal behavior and kind of walk through in detail the process of getting them to go back to school.
They're really interesting case studies, too.
I know. They certainly are. I'm going to walk you through these 2 case studies. The first one is a girl named Heidi.
I love that they had to clarify that it wasn't the real name.
I don't know why they added
I know,
that.
I like that. Not real name.
Yeah.
This is just an actor.
I was surprised that they needed to do that, because I would think
that's so, too. Yeah.
That obviously it's not her real name. Anyway, she was age 9, and at the time of their intervention, she had not attended school at all for 2 weeks.
So long.
Yeah. And that was, sort of not even the whole story. So her story started at the beginning of the school year, and the teacher, she claimed that the teacher was mean to her and was screaming at her, and that the kids in the class were staring at her. She didn't know the answer. She had other somatic symptoms like stomachache. Her parents actually transferred her to a new school.
I'm proud of them for trying.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, all right.
Yeah. But then the same thing happened at the new school as well. So that all happened within the first 2 months of school, and then she just stopped going to the new school. One day she has to go to the bathroom, and
never returned.
She never returned. Yeah, she went to the bathroom and then just went home.
That's insane. And scary.
I know, and she's only 9. So she went home, and then other days she would go to school and then leave school, and her parents would find her around
in the neighborhood. I was like, reading that, I was like, oh my God, can you imagine being that mom?
Yeah,
you're either real mad,
right?
You're like, oh man, I'm so mad, or you're like probably freaked out and then real mad,
right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were freaked out, which is why they reached out for help.
Yeah.
So at this point, she had just not attended school, so then they stopped trying to send her. They would drive her there. She would refuse to get out of the car, and then they would drive her home. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the background for her. They conducted a myriad of assessments. I didn't focus on those. I just looked at the SRAS, which identified potentially both negative and positive reinforcement as a potential function.
Which makes sense. I mean,
totally makes sense, right? Because you don't like going to school, you leave school, you escape all sorts of things, including doing hard tasks, getting chastised by your classmates, like weird social situations. And then you go home and your mom is there with you all day and you just get to do whatever you want. So I feel like so many of these situations are probably both.
Mm.
Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree with you.
As Greg Hanley says, you don't escape from something to nothing. Mm-hmm. You escape from something to other things.
Something.
And usually better things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that was definitely the case, it seemed, for Heidi. So they went in and did a multi-step treatment for her, which I'm going to review with you guys now. Is that cool, Rob, or do you want me to talk more about the Revised Children's Manifest Anxiety Scale, the State Trait Anxiety Inventory for Children, the Social Anxiety Scale for Children Revised, the Daily Life Stressor Scale, the Fear Survey Schedule for Children Revised, the Children's Depression Inventory, or the Piers-Harris Self-Concept Scale?
So what? I'm sorry, I totally zoned out.
Do you think she was like, stop asking me questions? Right?
What about that? So
I wasn't feeling anxious before,
but now I am.
Just the SRAS scores. That's the only one that I think is, I don't want to say relevant.
Or the child's behavior checklist, or the teacher's report form.
What was the SRAS score?
It's everything. That's why they're the complex
They
cases.
gave us the severity ratings for the Anxiety Disorders Interview Schedule for Children.
Both parties were clearly distressed about school, but both also enjoyed spending time with their parents or being at home during the school day.
Yeah, so she rated highly on the anxiety disorder scale, such that they diagnosed her based on these assessments that they did with separation anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and social anxiety disorder.
Jeez Louise, that's some society disorders.
And she's only 9, too,
yeah,
right? So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that'd be sort of, if you're looking at the SRS, it'd be Category 2, that'd be Category 3, possibly Category 1, probably Category 1.
So all the categories.
Maybe not Category 4, but...
Is it Category 4 hurricane?
No, Category 4 is to prefer reinforcers outside of school, and she enjoyed being at home with her mom.
That's true, but if she enjoys with her mom, it's Category 3.
Social.
Oh, yeah.
But again, she may have also enjoyed doing activities with her mom, and it was fine if mom wasn't there.
Puzzling.
Yeah.
My little crafting. I won't ever be
Nails.
that mom. I will be that mom.
I won't be, because my children will not do arts and crafts with me to save my
tried
life.
So hard.
I know.
You can have mine.
So just like we talked about with the last article, it's possible that you have a student that comes out on all these scales and it's like, I guess it's everything. And then what?
Well, let me tell you. So the treatment that they proposed was a combination of anxiety management and parental contingency management. Now, does that exactly mean the parents are going to be implementing the contingencies, or they needed to put contingencies in place for the parents?
I think both.
A little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Ideally, I think it's the parents engaging in a contingency management with their daughter, Heidi.
But then they also said that they would bring her into school if necessary.
Yes.
Right? So that's one thing that they had to train the parents on. If she says no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm going to highlight this for both participants. They had the parents on board.
Yes, the parents
are
like, I need to do
so key in the actual implementation of the treatment that we're going to discuss.
If you read the School Refusal Behavior book, also by Christopher Kearney,
Uh-huh.
there's a whole section about what do you do when there are problems. One of the problems being, what do you do if the parents are not on board, and how do you get them on board
or absent?
And it is kind of complex.
Right.
The last step being you call the government and say these parents are not good parents. But if you want to do that, you're pretty much saying, and I don't want to work with this family ever again, and I want to destroy this relationship.
Right,
so it's really rare that that's the step you would take.
But I love what they've done with Heidi, though. I love it.
I know, it's really good, and it's
very
pretty
thorough.
nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step, so first they got everyone on board, right? Their initial plan was they were going to bring Heidi in and talk to her
Right.
through the whole process. And that didn't go as planned because she wouldn't come into the building.
Like, screw you guys.
Yes. So they had to back up from there. They did get her into the waiting room, and they had a grad student sit and establish rapport with her, and they went, and the parents talked through the whole process with the psychologist, which should happen regardless. But that's kind of where they started. So they got the parents to agree that the first step would be to drive her to school to get her homework. They did that so that she would have to visit school regularly, and so she would also have stuff to work on at home. So I'm going to walk you through the steps, but also know, like, overlying this entire process, they did relaxation training for her and anxiety management strategies too. So like that's going on throughout this whole process. Once they got where she would drive to school and pick up her homework.
And talk to someone.
Yeah, she talked to like one of the school administrators or someone there. She could come back home and do her homework. But during the school day, she had to stay in her room and work on her schoolwork. She couldn't access other fun recreational activities. So that was part of the whole process. And then even if she hadn't gone to school that day, then even after the school hours, she had limited activities that she could engage in too. So she couldn't do all the fun things, and she usually had to go to bed earlier as well.
They say that here, I love that they had to do some parent training on like giving instructions. Short and concise.
Yes.
I like that.
And feasible for her to do. They don't explain exactly why that happened.
The succinct instructions?
Yeah.
Just to minimize the amount of attention they would give during the transition to school in the morning. And to make it easier, again, the general reasons you would, to make it easier for you to know the child understands the instruction.
That was kind of the background of the whole process. And then they had a step where they had her come in for 1 hour to school, but not to her classroom, to a different room, and take a test that she had missed. And that went well. And then the next step was going to be having her attend class for 45 minutes. However, when she went that day, the school administrators totally blew it, and tried to force her to attend and stay in the classroom the whole day.
You want to write your plan out and agree to follow it.
Right. So that did not go well. That resulted in her bolting from the school. And then she ran away as well at home 2 more times. So they kind of had to backtrack from there. I imagine there were some choice words spoken behind closed doors. And then everyone regrouped.
Right?
And
they were so mad.
Right? I know.
I'm glad the parents stayed on board and they were able to keep working with the team.
Right.
Because that could have been where it was like, you screwed up and we are going to a new school again.
Yeah,
but
seriously.
Hopefully at that point they'd realized going to a new school was not actually going to fix the problem.
Yeah. I know. So kudos to the parents for sticking it out. And for the researchers for continuing to work on the situation. So at that point, they also put into place some additional safety protocols for any instances of running away so that they could make sure that she was safe if this happened again. Then what they did was, they talked to her throughout the whole process. Right? So they checked in with her to make sure she was cool with each of the steps, except the step that the school administrators messed up.
Yeah.
Heidi said that this plan was okay, was for her to attend a half day in class with her mom. And then her mom, after lunch, would go home and she would stay for the remainder of the day.
12 to 2. I love it.
Yeah. And then the step after that was that she would go the full day in class. And then at that point, she was okay. And she stayed.
She just needed a little go for it.
Yeah. And then they did a 1-year follow-up with her later, and she'd only missed like 4 days of school in the next year. So it was a systematic approach, but she got through it, and then she was able to attend class. She did good. Questions about Heidi?
Oh, I love her.
No.
Okay. Our next student is Trent. Trent was 10 years old. He was a 10-year-old man.
I'm sorry. Oh, man.
He's like Benjamin Button.
Right. He's my dad, but he's 10.
When the researchers met Trent, he had missed 12 days of school thus far in the school year, and it was in November. So that's like, it was like 2.5 weeks.
That's all in November, pretty much.
It's all in November. In the previous year, so this was like not a new problem. The previous year, he had missed 24 days of school, which is
That's
like
a
5
lot.
or 6 weeks of school in the last year. So they knew that once he started missing days, he was going to continue to do so. So he cited problems of embarrassment and anxiety in the classroom, or they felt were probably largely related to both his inattentiveness in the classroom, and he did seem to have a learning disability related to writing and spelling. He would get up and pace around in the classroom, etc. So he mentioned that the teacher would yell. Sometimes she called out the grades that the kids got in the class.
That is rude.
Which is a really terrible practice, and I don't blame him for not wanting to be there for that, particularly if school was hard for him. So that seems like legit. But what he would do is run out of the classroom and also run home. Not safe.
Yeah, hopefully guys don't live like 6 miles away from,
I guess they all
right?
live really close to their school.
I hope so.
They're walkers or something.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was interesting that there must be like really neighborhood schools for these kids. So he would run home, and then when he got home, his parents would let him stay home. They didn't want him to go back, and they were worried about the things he was experiencing
Potential
at school.
harm.
Yeah. However, that put him in the situation where he was now escaping school pretty regularly, so they did an SRAS on him, in addition to the entire battery of other tests I mentioned before. And they also determined for Trent that his school refusal behavior was likely both positively and negatively maintained. Mm-hmm. So they implemented a treatment. Now, during the course of the whole treatment, don't forget that they were providing him a lot of training on coping skills that he could use for anxiety, as well as, after he did start to go to school again, how he could interact with his peers and answer questions that they might have about why he wasn't there, why he was only coming part day. So they were a lot of social skills type training.
And parent training, too. They also put that in there.
Yeah. Parent training, too. So they talked with him and his parents. They had developed this entire plan, similar shaping, right? You're just going to attend part days. We're going to remove all grading components, etc. But then before they could get started with the training, one of his parents, I think, mentioned, like, we're going to start, like, the goal's going to be for you to go back to school. So there was this, when that happened, there was a big incident with him in his kitchen.
With a knife.
Yes, where he had a knife and he was making some type of verbal threat to his parents. So his parents called the police. Mm-hmm.
That's what you got to do, bro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Called the police. Police came. They did an entire psychiatric evaluation for him to determine if he needed to be committed to a hospital. They decided that he did not. But nonetheless, it was definitely a big deal in all caps.
Yeah.
So following the big deal in all caps, they revisited the treatment plan. And they required from Trent that they get a full commitment from him that there would be no more violence and that he would go along with the plan. And he readily agreed.
I like
so,
this.
Yeah.
He appeared still shaken by his parents' willingness to contact the police and hospital personnel.
Exactly. That was the impetus, I think, for him really taking this whole thing very seriously. And it seemed like
Good job, parents.
Definitely.
I mean, that's scary.
Yeah, they're like, they will call the police on me. And now we know. Yeah. So that was...
Parents, if you're going to threaten to call the police on your children...
Do it.
Do it.
Yeah, follow through.
Or don't make that threat.
Exactly. Okay, so once all that had happened, his treatment from there went pretty smoothly, actually. Yeah, so they started out having him attend school by going to the main office.
I'm gonna yell your grade out, Trent. You better stay in here. I'm calling the cops again.
No, so we have to give the teacher some credit though, because she brought the whole class down to the office.
Oh yeah,
right. Like she's trying. She was probably like, "Wow, I suck."
Oh, I'm guessing they spent some time
with her. Right? Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like the kids were supportive and like encouraging him to be coming back to school. So that seems sweet.
That is the nice thing about, I think, most problems in school. Almost everybody really does want to, really wants to help.
Yeah.
I know. And these were younger kids, too. I don't know how, I feel like it gets much more complicated once you get into middle and high school.
Yeah.
Even I've seen older students, too, where, you know, the kids are out for some reason or there's a problem and they almost always, you know, really want to be supportive. Like, there's a very small percentage of kids, I think, who at least outwardly kind of take advantage of the fact that someone's having a hard time. I know there are some, but for the most part, I think people either don't have any skin in the game and they don't really care, or they're supportive.
And then for him, they also set up contingencies that were attention-based, right? So they said the likely function of his behavior is attention, so we're going to make sure that whatever reinforcements we have in place for attending school are attention-type things, like spending time with your parents. And then if you don't attend school, then the, punishers as well are going to be attention-based too, so you're going to have to go to bed early. Right. So I thought that was good that there was that, tried to make it as function-based treatment as possible. So initially he came to school kind of whenever he got there, which was like 10:15, and he stayed in the office. Then that's when the class came to ask if that he wanted to come down to the class, which is nice. Yeah, and he definitely did. So he definitely found their positive interactions reinforcing. So he happily went to class with them. They worried that they may have moved too fast. So then they said from then on he had the option. He could either go to class or have school in the library or in the office. And then from there, after that was successful for a while, then they said, okay, now we're going to require that in the latter half of the day, you do go attend with the class, which generally wasn't a problem. And then they had the parents. So he had been kind of like coming in on his own sweet time whenever he got to school. And then they asked the parents to bring him early before school started, so he would start his day with some socialization on the playground.
So someone was being smart there.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And his parents were on board, again, super important. So then he started getting there even before school started, and then he needed to attend class starting at 10 a.m. So from like 8 to 10, he could do it in another room. Then 10 to the rest of the day, he had to be in classroom. Then the next step was be in classroom all day, and then he just came to school.
Yeah, and the nice thing, too, though, is that they also looked at in-class stuff. So they not only got him to school, but then they had him, like, with a token economy system, teacher feedback, weekly progress reports, peer assistance, individualized academic programs. So they, like, tried to help out.
Yeah, because he did need support in the classroom, so they made sure that he had the things in the class he needed to be successful.
Which is good, I'm glad.
Yeah, because that's more fair for him. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then at the 1-year follow-up, he'd only missed 2 days when he was out sick.
Go, Trent.
I know.
Go, Trent.
Go, Trent.
Those are pretty complex cases.
They were.
They were. And so I think that you've done what you needed to do.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to just round up the evening or the morning or the afternoon, whenever you're listening to this fine podcast, with moving from assessment to treatment of school refusal behavior in youth. So this kind of is an overall, it's like a little review of the steps that you would want to take, according to Kearney again, and Chapman and Cook, if you need to treat some school refusal behavior. And this is the article where Kearney is the only reference available, which I kind of love. Yeah. I hope someday in my life I'm like, McDonald J.M. McDonald J.M. I don't work as hard as he does.
I have to cite myself because I'm just like the only one who's done any work in this field. What am I going to do?
Happen. Again, so this is going to be like a rounded out, right? So they said that school refusal behavior is generally maintained to avoid school-based stimuli that may provoke some negative affectivity, they say, either anxiety or depression, to escape aversive school-based social or evaluative situations such as tests, to pursue attention from significant others, or to pursue tangible reinforcers outside of school. So it could be one or all of these, and so what they want you to do is the following. Step 1. Examine ratings from versions of the school refusal assessment scale. So we know that he made this and he likes it and he uses it and it seems to help.
It is a good starting point.
Right, it's a great...
Especially if you are like a therapist or a school psychologist who did not have a lot of knowledge of school refusal behavior.
Yeah.
It is a great way to sort of conceptualize the idea of school refusal as a behavior that has a function and to have a general sense of, okay, where do I want to put my time? Because you could do sort of like in the mixed study, you could do a little bit of everything.
Right.
But ideally you don't have to. And in some cases of school refusal behavior, especially if you catch it early enough, like it's only been 2 or 3 days, you may only need to focus on one of the functions.
Right.
If you got a kid who's like, they haven't been in school in 2 years, you might as well probably just go ahead and do every single possible treatment you could do. But if you get it early enough, maybe it's just school anxiety around friends, and you can just work on that.
Yeah, so they recommend using the SRASR. And so here, again, like we talked about, we have the child score and the 2 parent scores. And if there's 2 parents, obviously, they're averaged together. And they do note that the profile weighs toward parent input if there's 2 parents, right? Because it's 2 parents against 1 kid. But they have found this to be desirable since the parents usually are the ones that find the concern.
Yeah.
And so what they say is that there's a few things that could happen. Everyone could agree on the hypothesis of why the student is not coming to school. And then if that happens, they recommend, oh, you're good. You can just go with that hypothesis. I think as behavior analysts, we might not say, oh, you're good. You might want to do a few tests.
Mm-hmm. But you might be able to come up with like a really easy hypothesis testing situation.
Yeah, so you might be able to find a quick like turn behavior on and off condition that you could just do a quick assessment for that. But they don't necessarily think that you have to do that. But as a behavior analyst, I would want to.
Yeah, but again, this might be the realm of a adjustment counselor or school psychologist where their ethics might not require them to do more.
Yeah. Or the second, which is most what usually happens, is that there's substantial disagreement between the parent and child, or between parent and parent versions. And so here, then you might want to delve a little bit further, right? So then they say...
How would I do that, Jackie?
Then they go to step 2. Examine other descriptive evidence to corroborate. I love that word.
Corroborate.
Do I say it wrong?
You said corroborate.
Corroborate. Like that?
Just think of me. Corroborate.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Functional hypothesis. So if there's agreement, you could look for other things that might say that. And if there isn't agreement, then you might want to do some other measures. We might recommend, taking some data, doing some behavioral observations, maybe looking at some more antecedent consequence-based information that may happen.
In Kearney's book, he does have a lot of good anxiety rating scales that teachers can use, so you can get some data there. And he has a form you could actually use if you wanted to do a home behavior assessment that sort of looks at, how much stress did the student appear to be at this point in the getting ready routine, at this point in the getting ready routine. At one point, you actually ask them, how are things going in the middle of the routine?
And they say that they do this a lot with what's called a family dynamic pattern. And they look for clinicians to help identify a particular function getting ready in the morning. So maybe it's not actually going to school, but it's the process of going to school. So they try to look at that. And also, so then you're going to do step 3. Examine behavioral observation evidence to corroborate. Oh, it worked.
Yeah, there you
go. Functional hypothesis. So here... they say formal and in-session observation should be used, but they don't really give us a whole bunch of like how they're observing. And again, they're still talking about descriptive information.
Yeah.
I think as a behavior analyst, we would want to set up maybe contrived situations where we could observe school refusal, or maybe find conditions under which we may not see school refusal. And in one of the articles, there is a tiny blurb about that, where they're like, we wanted to see if it was because they wanted to hang out with mom, so mom went to school that day. And we're going to talk about that example. And so,
that's the problem with a lot of the research, is that the examples they give make perfect sense.
Right.
And you could think of them, whether you're a behavior analyst or not, makes perfect sense. Okay, this is how I'm going to test and prove this hypothesis. But when you're dealing with those complex cases like the Heidis and Trents of the world, it just feels like there's
a
no
lot going on.
Great way that I've ever been able to think of to tease out exactly what's happening, because everything is just smooshed together.
Right. So I think as a behavior analyst, we would want to probably do a lot of observation around before school. If they do come to school, talk to the teacher about what may have happened in school.
Yeah.
And then maybe contrive situations where we could potentially see if school happened or didn't happen based on what our changes were.
I think the issue also comes in, though, is that the longer you're just trying to test to find the exact function,
the longer they're not in school.
Right. And at some point you have to ask, okay, do I have enough of my descriptive assessment to feel I have a strong enough hypothesis that I'm just going to say, let's do all this stuff, and then we look at our data afterwards to assess, okay, are they back in school more?
To be honest, the assessment can be part of treatment, right? So as soon as you find something that's just go with it. And that's what they say too. So if you find something that works, go with that prescribed treatment. If you don't, you may want to continue looking up some more information and talk to school officials about what they think might be going on. So that could be the parents.
School officials who haven't solved the problem. What do you think's going on?
But they say too that it may be multiple functions, right?
You've been incompetent so far. What do you think I should do next?
It could be multiple functions.
We don't know. No one likes to come to school.
It's a scary truth.
So yeah,
it's been uncovered.
So then once you think of a functional hypothesis, and maybe you've done as a behavior analyst a little like turn behavior on and off. You're looking some more conditions that you can maybe promote school readiness or school attendance, less school refusal, then you go with it. And they give a really, I love it, illustrative example where Cecilia doesn't want to go to school, and she hasn't been in school for 3 months.
That's breaking my heart.
And she's
shaking my
grader.
confidence daily.
Yeah. So she's a third grader whose prior attendance record was sometimes problematic, but it was always manageable until this year. And this year, she just does not want to go to school. She doesn't like her new teacher in her class, and their daughter did cry and refuse to move in the morning before school in an effort to stay home, which is like, I love that.
I'm down on my knees.
Right?
I'm begging you, please. Go
Let
to
me
school.
stay home.
That's so funny. So yeah, so they did everything that they needed to do, right? So they believed that her first function said that she was just anxious about school, and the second function was attention-seeking behavior. And the parents said, "Oh yeah, it's attention-seeking behavior," and that's the only one. That's what the parents say. So
her treatment was going to come out probably as it came out.
Right. So she didn't have any previous mental disorder or any diagnoses. And so there was also a new baby in the house, so that sometimes leads to a little aggression and things. And so what they did is they had Cecilia go to school with her mom, and her mom was the classroom parent helper for 4 days over the next 2 weeks. And Cecilia went to school on the days when her mom was going to be there, but she was still sad in class. And she still complained about stomach aches and her homework assignments. So then they said that it was primarily motivated by attention because she went to school, but secondarily motivated by the desire to avoid homework assignments because she was still sullen and complaining. So then they did some contingency management where if she went to school and didn't complain about it, then she got some free time with her mom in the evenings and help from her dad on her homework assignments.
Great.
And I love this part. And if she didn't, then she had to go to bed early, which she dreaded. I love that they put that in here.
There's a lot of go to bed early and get up early in the book, and I think some of it is because reliably, if you're going to have an hour battle to get your kid to school, you might as well start an hour early. Come on, everybody, let's get up at 4 a.m.
So treatment over a 7-week period resulted in full-time school attendance. She was back on track. So we've had a couple illustrative case examples of Kearney's work on school refusal, so that's been really fun, and I think it might be time for us to head into dissemination station.
I agree. So first, if you have enjoyed hearing about school refusal behavior and you'd like to learn more about school refusal behavior, the book that I had purchased was Helping School Refusing Children and Their Parents, a Guide for School-Based Professionals by, I forget who it was by.
Who is it? Who's his name?
Somebody, who was it?
Oh.
It was by, Christopher Kearney. It was by Christopher Kearney again.
Kearney.
There are other versions too. There's When Children Refuse School, a cognitive behavior therapy approach guide. There's one for therapists. There's one for parents. I believe that's also Kearney with a co-author. Getting Your Child to Say Yes to School, a guide for parents of youth with school refusal. A lot of these are sort of the same type of book, or they're just older versions, or which one can you get on Amazon, like which one's currently in print. If you really are like, I'm tired of this Christopher Kearney fellow, there is also a book called Overcoming School Refusal, a practical guide for teachers, counselors, caseworkers, and parents that is more recently by Galfi, it looks like. I have only read the Helping School Refusing Children and Their Parents guide. It's a green book that looks like someone wrote on the chalkboard. You can find it on Amazon. It's $50, which I'll be honest is a little expensive given it is not that long a book, and you do get more detail than you do in the articles. But if you go do an exhaustive lit review on Kearney's work, you might get almost all the same information. There are a couple cool data sheets. Some of them you can find online, and we'll link to some if I remember to put those links in. Yeah. There are a couple others that are for parents that are a bit cheaper. So I can only speak to the one I read. It was very enjoyable, but also a lot of the ground, not all of it, was covered in the research itself. So it depends on how you want to learn more about it.
Sure. I love that.
Now let's talk about the overall procedure. So one of the things I always come away when I review this research is, why don't we just do all the stuff all the time for all the cases of school refusal behavior and say, who cares about the function? If we do relaxation, if we do some amount of contingency management, if we set up some sort of good reinforcement system, we're going to solve all the problems. And honestly, if you have a case where the student has been out of school for an extended period of time, you probably have to do all of them anyway. So do we even care about the function?
I do.
I do too. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate with.
I love devil's advocate because I'm like, Rob, I'm going to slap you. Of course you care about the function.
But could one say, I mean, as behavior analysts, we have an ethical obligation. But if you weren't a behavior analyst, if you were just like a teacher trying to help out, does it make sense to do all this stuff? Or do you just say, here's a bunch of things that we should do. Let's get a team together and do them.
So what I think is, as a behavior analyst, we know that behavior doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? So behaviors exist in response classes. So I'm pretty certain that the school refusal probably doesn't exist on its own. It's not its own response class, right? I bet there's other behaviors that are occurring in an attempt to access the reinforcers that school refusal is accessing. So if we don't know the function and we get rid of school refusal, right, we're probably going to see an increase of other behaviors as well within that same response class. So that's why I care, is that we want to make sure that we're decreasing behavior while increasing behavior, appropriate behavior. Yeah. That's why I want to know the function, is because I want to know how I can get rid of all of these undesirable behaviors and replace them with acceptable behaviors. And they're kind of doing that, right, by teaching like relaxation, but they're not we don't know if they're teaching them like acceptable responses or like, you know, like when you feel this, take a deep breath. Is that accessing the same reinforcer? Maybe, maybe not, right?
Yeah, and they talk about talking them through the whole process, right? Like, seems like you're missing a lot of school.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, right? And cluing them in on the reasons why they might actually be doing that, which I think is really good.
I do
and
too.
These are young kids in the studies that we looked at, but this can also happen for older kids, and older kids are very soon going to be going out and trying to get jobs. And
very jobs.
The big issue with the older students, too, is that you are usually then talking about school refusal that has been a pattern. So last year, there was a lot of school refusal. And this year, there's been a lot of school refusal. And you usually do see that it's been something that's happened for a while. I know I would love to have like a number. Like, this is the number of days. I can't remember if Kearney describes a number or discusses a number in the book. But this is the number of days. Like, when you hit this many days, get together the team and start thinking, could this be, serious school refusal behavior? Because the earlier you catch it, the easier it's going to be to determine the function, because it probably is only one, maybe two functions at best at that point, especially if it's a younger child. And you have so many more options. The nuclear option being you can pick up a little kid and put them in the car. That's in the book. That is an option for treatment. It's like, nope, you're going to school. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm physically going to, this is the parents, I'm going to bring you to school.
Right. Yeah. Jackie, you haven't gotten to this point yet with your daughter, but like when they're really little, you can just like get them dressed, put their shoes on them, and put them in the car.
That's where I'm at.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they get bigger, and then you're like, will you please just get your stuff and get in the car? Just get in the car.
Yeah, we're
just
not there
yet.
yet.
Put your shoes on. Did you get your lunchbox? You didn't get your lunchbox. You go get your lunchbox and get in the car. You don't have your shoes on.
You don't need shoes.
Yeah.
Even in winter.
So,
and that's when kids actually don't hate school.
Exactly. That's just a kid who just goes to school with no problem. It's still that hard to get them to school.
I feel for parents. I mean, I really feel for parents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the student the most, and then the parents second, just because of how difficult it is. And I mean, I can imagine. And
disruptive, right? Like, you can't have a job.
You can't have your job. Or if you have an older student, you kind of are like, I guess I have to leave you home. And that's the wrong move because whatever reason they're not going to school, it's just going to get worse. But what are you going to do? You can only take so many days off. So it is very challenging. And this is definitely an area where, the sooner you can respond, I think the easier it is for treatment to be effective. The longer you wait or the more you're like, well, I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Or let's change some minor component of what might be going on here. The better chance you really are asking for a problem that lasts for a long time, requires way more individuals to all be firing on all cylinders to make treatment effective. And there's nothing worse than saying the only way this treatment will work is if 10 to 12 different people all do their jobs perfectly. Because when was the last time you had 10 to 12 people who were like, we all completely agree on exactly what to do and won't deviate at all
But that
from
is
the plan.
Required.
It is required.
Oh, okay.
It is totally required.
That's exactly what's required.
Just when's the last time, though, that you said, oh, yeah, I got together with 11 other colleagues, including people that aren't my colleagues, that might or might not have a lot of background in this information, and we all agree this was the thing to do, and we all promised to do it, and then we did. It's rare.
Right.
That you can get that level of...
These are definitely takes a village
Yeah.
situations here when you have like this level of school refusal.
Mm-hmm.
But they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a big part of it is shaping.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I love shaping because shaping really works.
Mm-hmm.
It really does work. And you can go slow or go fast, you know, and adjust as needed. If you have a misstep, you can go back and relook at it. And that's what worked here in combination with providing, you know, relaxation techniques and anxiety management strategies, which I think are important too. We don't want to leave those pieces out.
Yeah.
And I liked these studies, again, because they included the child all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's meaningful because as they grow and encounter different scenarios, like in my study at the follow-up, yes, Heidi had only missed 4 days of school, but when they did all those other assessments again, she was still really anxious about other things, right? It wasn't school specifically, but she was still very anxious, and she still carried all those other diagnoses. So it's highly possible that down the road, Heidi's going to have other problems where she's not going to want to
go anywhere
or go to her job or go to the mall or hang out with anyone, right? So she may have some future problems.
She didn't seem to generalize some of those relaxation techniques to other problems in her life.
Right.
Or they weren't, maybe she did and they're still, you know, still an intense anxiety
and
around
she was
them.
only 9 years old. So just wait until what high school brings you, you know?
Ugh.
But I think that it's good that they talked with her through the whole thing, and
I like that too.
Helped her hopefully identify what the reason why she was doing this was, so that later when that happens again, maybe she can better cope and, you know, revisit the strategies that she had learned.
Yeah. One area that I think it's not exactly missing, but if I were to say this is where the research should go, would really be looking more in depth at the idea of a more direct functional assessment of behavior. So I really like the SRAS. It is a great starting point because you know what? You might get lucky and everybody says I just love watching TV at home. I hate school and want to I want to watch Price is Right all day. And the parents say, "Yep, he loves that Price is Right." And there you go. You don't need to spend any more time. You can come up with a really easy treatment, which is your TV is only available when you come home from school.
Right. Easy.
And turning it off otherwise. Bam. And nowadays, most people don't even have antennas, so you could just say, unplug the router, and the kid can't even watch TV without that. You just take the plug out. Parents don't even have to have a fight about it.
Change the Wi-Fi password.
Change the Wi-Fi password. So
I'm just kidding.
So you could come up with the easy treatment, but when you don't have that, when you are getting those mixed results, okay, what exactly should that look like? And it's all well and good to have that. Well, say, hey, what if your mom comes to school with you, or hey, you can do this if you go to school first.
It's all like contractual.
But
it's contractual, and it's a verbal statement, right? So we all know
you would then like act it out, but it just seems like testing that. Even if you came up with all the contrived situations,
get, or you could maybe measure like precursor behavior, right? Mm-hmm. Like, did you even get out of bed when I said, "Oh, today there's no TV at home"?
Yeah,
right. Or did you get dressed? Or did you speak at all? Like maybe you could measure some.
Maybe none of it seems very timely.
Subtle
though.
behavior.
I think that's the problem. Is that you could look at precursor behaviors, and I think getting out of bed is usually the one, or getting ready in the morning is usually the one. But so many of them feel like, especially the complex cases, it would take so many days of just going to the house and assessing these things, or getting the parents to fill out the forms, that you'd be adding so much extra time that there's got to be a better way. And maybe there isn't. Maybe if you needed to know the exact function, it would take an extended period of time, because you can only go to school once,
right?
Really.
But again, it's escaping from something to something else. So I think very often there's going to be both components here, and the treatment package generally includes treatment for both components.
Or if any kids misses 2 days, you make like a school-wide policy where you have to video tape what's happening in the morning, right? Like, or like you have to then, after like the 2-day mark, then the behavior analyst is notified, right? And so then you don't get the opportunity to miss 5 days of school because somebody's already on your back, getting it. So if you even hit it right in the beginning.
I think it would be wise for districts, if they don't have a policy of red flagging this many absences, to do some investigative work. And it might be small, it might be you look at they're all doctor's appointments and you just call the parent and say, hey, we always worry about this, so make sure everything's okay. And if there's any sort of extended, reason your child can't come to school, please let us know because we can help you make accommodations. We can make it easier to make up work. It's a very friendly thing.
Yeah.
Or, hey, it looks like they haven't come to school for 3 days, 4 days, whatever the number is. There's no reason given. We just are always worried. We want to make sure we're here to support you. So these are things that could happen. What's going on?
I love that. I love it. It's proactive, right?
I don't know how much parents would want to tell you, oh, I can't get my kid out in the morning. They're tantruming.
Or they might.
They might, though.
Right? Or they might.
What's the worst that happens? Like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
And then it is a problem, right? What I love is my school did this as well. My school did this. So I was late for school my senior year for 3 days because Sailor Moon was on and I wanted to watch it. And it didn't finish before my homeroom bell. And I got 2 weeks detention.
Ooh.
Because I was late for 3 days in a row. And they called my parents. I had to sit in a room alone in this little box. It was like a closet basically. And they gave me extra homework. I couldn't even work on my homework. I had to do extra homework for being late.
That's rough.
From the class that I was late from. So it was supplementary work.
Yeah.
And it worked, man.
Well, because if you're going to punish someone, you might as well punish the hell out of them the first
time,
right?
Yeah.
Don't bother punishing if you're not going to pull out all the stops.
So it was very effective.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
But if they'd known the function, they could have been like, Jackie, let's help you find a VCR so you can tape Sailor Moon.
Right? That's true.
The reinforcing measure. Come on, everybody.
Right?
Let's all hold hands.
But yeah, my mom didn't know I was late. So, then she did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of the research into the absenteeism, the bigger term absenteeism,
right.
There have been a couple articles recently that I have not thoroughly read. I've sort of looked at the abstract and skimmed them, but is looking more at the global picture of making sure parents know when their kids aren't in school.
Yeah.
And it's like, look at the rates of kids coming to school. They're skyrocketing. And it does seem like a lot of it is, if you just make sure that the easy problems get solved. But hey, you know what? Sometimes it's best to say, let's make us treatment for all the easy problems in the world.
Right. I agree.
Because we're going to get you probably get huge dividends just from, if we text parents when kids don't show up, many parents might be like, oh, I'm pissed at you, kid. No TV tonight. You're going to bed early. And then the kids start going to school and you never even have to worry about it becoming school refusal behavior so much as just a blip.
Yeah, I came to school, guys. I went to school.
I'm glad you went to school.
And then I continued going to school for the next 20 years.
Right?
It worked.
Kept going.
But I learned a lot. This has never been an issue because I've never worked in public schools in this capacity, so it was fun. It was fun to read this.
Yes.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I feel like I know a lot more about how you would tackle this problem.
Me too.
Yeah. It is an interesting problem. It is not always as, I think, easy as it looks like in the papers. But, I've worked with a number at this point. Even in the past year and a half where I became aware of this and started doing the research, I've had worked with a number of families and teams. And, sometimes I've always started with the SRAS, and sometimes it is really paid out in terms of, wow, that tells us exactly what we need to do. Other times it's been more like the Heidi Trent situations, but it's been nice to know that there's actual research on this and it's not sort of just you making it up as you go along. Yeah. Although I guess if I'd made it up as I go along, then I'd be the Christopher Kearney of the world, publishing all my great articles.
I hope Christopher Kearney is listening and he's like, thanks, Rob,
I'm sure he's
using the SRS.
Randomly.
Revised.
Christopher Kearney, thank you so much for your revision in your books. And if any of you listen and have read any of the other books that are out there or know any research, I have a bunch. We only did the 3 articles. Please let us know, especially with the books, because it's hard to read a whole ton of books. All right, well, that takes us to the end of the show. Thanks, everybody out there, so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you enjoyed the show and would like continuing education credits, well, then you better know the second secret code word, which is TOWER. TOWER, like a tower of power.
I live in a tower.
You could live in a tower, like a Rapunzel, or you could...
Like a Rapunzel.
Or a Tower of London, or a Tower of...
Terror.
That's right. Tower. Well, thanks, Diana. Thanks, Jackie, so much for talking about school refusal behavior with me and with our audience tonight. I hope
Thanks for making me come to podcast, Rob.
Yes.
Me too, Rob. Thanks.
So your contingency management is you can have...
I made brownies.
A brownie. Oh, you can eat one of your brownies.
Actually delicious. I ate 2.
Although I think I didn't control your economy because you made them and have had at least one before.
What? What do you mean?
So, Thanks so much to everyone out there for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please let us know if you did by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever you got this podcast. Please subscribe, too, if you liked us. We come out every week. Every other week, we have one of these longer episodes, and in between, we have our preview episodes where we talk about issues in the community. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and you can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. And, of course, the website, abainsidetrack.com, where you can find our posts and purchase CEs. We will be back next week with a preview episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye!
See ya!
Bye.